I'm here in Bratislava in IPC 2023 to give a lecture, let's say a talk about giving an overview of the beneficial properties of Propionibacteria that are also called propionic acid bacteria. So these bacteria have been used for centuries to make the specific cheeses that we call Swiss-type cheeses. So, for instance, in France and in Switzerland, we produce Emmentaler, but you might also know Leerdammer. These are pressed and cooked cheeses, and they're also known as cheeses with holes. You know, there are holes which are called eyes within this cheese. And these bacteria that I have been working on for now more than 20 years have peculiar properties that explain some of their specific beneficial properties. So first of all, they produce short-chain fatty acids. They produce acetate and propionate, which are responsible for part of the specific aroma of these cheeses, which are described as a little bit picante, sweet and sour. But these short-chain fatty acids also have beneficial effects on the health through a specific modulation of epithelial cells within the gut. So I have shown this morning some results about the impact of these metabolites on the proliferation of epithelial cells, including cancer cells. And we had interesting data in vitro and in vivo in animal models about apoptotic depletion of colon cancer cells. The other peculiar characteristics of these bacteria is their cell wall architecture. This means the molecules that are present on the surface of these bacteria, which are highly variable among the different strains of Propionibacterium freudenreichi, which is the main species I'm working on. So we found that some of these surface compounds had a specific impact on the immune system that we studied first in vitro in a wide screening of these bacteria, and we were able to show that some of these strains of propionic acid bacteria have a so-called immunosuppressive effect, okay, by inducing interesting cytokines such as IL-10. Now, based on this information, we worked on different animal models of colitis, which is inflammatory disease of the gut. And in these different models, we were able to show that eating some specific strains of this bacterium, Propionibacterium freudenreichi, can protect from acute colitis that is induced afterwards. And the interesting thing is that we have tested these bacteria in different food matrices, which means different vehicles to deliver the bacteria to the animals, like fermented milks with or without fat, or cheese matrices with or without calcium, fat, and propionic acid bacteria. And we went up to the conclusion that the food matrix of a cheese with proteins and with fat is the best vehicle to provide active propionic acid bacteria to the gut. So we are interested in the probiotic properties of these bacteria, on their survival in the product, survival within the host digestive system. In our lab, the STLO lab at INRAE in Rennes, we also have artificial digestive tubes, like artificial stomach and intestine, where we can study how these bacteria and these cheeses work, how the food matrix protects bacteria from the stress. We have different cellular models to look at their beneficial effects, and we have very nice collaborations with other teams outside the lab to do the animal experiments, because we don't do that in our laboratory. And so we're progressing on the beneficial effects of these cheese-borne bacteria. and on the mechanisms responsible for that. And the interesting thing is that a recent paper from American people in University of Florida, medical doctors, looked at the gut microbiota of two kinds of newborn infants. Infants which were born naturally and breastfed, and premature babies that were not breastfed, and these last children have a high probability to develop necrotizing enterocolitis, which is something you don't want for your children. And they compared the gut microbiota of healthy children and sick children, and they happened to find that propionic acid bacteria were members of the healthy microbiota of the healthy children, and also, but absent from the gut microbiota of necrotizing enterocolitis children. So this makes some, well, this is new for us, and these bacteria, propionic acid bacteria, which were mainly considered as cheese starters, can now be considered as probiotics and members of our beneficial intestinal flora, so let's say microbiota. So there might be also new generation probiotics together with cheese starters. These bacteria do produce propionic acid, but that's not the only thing they do. So to summarize the beneficial compounds they produce short-chain fatty acids, as you said. That's sure. But they also produce vitamins that, like folic acid, and these are vitamins of the B group that can also play an important role in the interaction between bacteria and us. And finally, so as I said, they produce molecules, surface compounds that interact with our immune system. And we were able to show that inactivation of some of the genes responsible for these key surface compounds completely change these bacteria, and they can even change from beneficial bacteria into potential pathogenic bacteria when you modify their architecture. So it is quite complex.